February 18, 2025, a discovery in Egypt shocks the archaeological world. For the first time in 103 years, the sand gives up a secret. Since King Tut's tomb was opened in 1922, no royal pharaoh's burial has ever been found until now. Archaeologists have uncovered the tomb of a ruler tied to one of the most powerful bloodlines in ancient history. His wife would seize an empire and his son would conquer it, yet somehow his tomb vanished from history almost as if it had been erased on purpose. Then beneath a hidden waterfall, a staircase was found descending into darkness. What lay below wasn't just a lost tomb. It was evidence that ancient Egypt may have hidden a secret for over 3,500 years. Before we pull back that limestone door and step into the darkness of the tomb, we must first understand the man buried inside. A pharaoh so obscure, so overshadowed, that history nearly erased him entirely. There were pharaohs who shook the ancient world, conquerors who carved their names into mountains, generals who ruled from the Mediterranean to the edge of sub-Saharan Africa. And then there is Thutmose II. The fourth ruler of Egypt's mighty 18th dynasty ascended the throne of the most powerful civilization on Earth around 1493 BC. And yet, for nearly 3,500 years after his death, not a single piece of his funerary furniture had ever been found in any museum on the entire planet. Not one object, not one confirmed artifact. A man who once held the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt had effectively vanished from the archaeological record. This was not an accident of history. Thutmose II was never supposed to be pharaoh at all. He was born not to Egypt's great royal wife, but to a secondary queen named Mutnofret, a woman of lower royal rank, which placed him in a precarious position in the brutal, bloodthirsty game of succession that defined dynastic Egypt. To secure his claim to the throne, he married the most powerful woman in the palace, his half-sister Hatshepsut, the daughter of Thutmose I's great royal wife, Ahmose. That marriage was not love. It was politics, strategy, and survival wrapped in linen and gold. And that same strategic union would, in the end, cast a shadow over his legacy that lasted millennia. His reign was brief and by most historical accounts unremarkable. Modern scholars furiously debate even its basic length. It could have lasted as few as 3 years or as many as 14, depending on which ancient chronology you choose to trust. What little evidence survives suggests he launched minor military campaigns, suppressing uprisings in Nubia and the Sinai Peninsula, but nothing that earned him the immortal glory of the rulers who flanked him on either side of history. He was, in the bluntest historical terms, a placeholder, a man who sat between giants and left barely a footprint in the desert sand. And then, around 1479 BC, he was gone. The precise cause of his death remains one of Egyptology's quietly simmering controversies. Examinations of the mummy long believed to be his, discovered in the 19th century in the Deir el-Bahari royal cache, hint at a body ravaged by illness rather than battle. Some scholars propose he suffered from a chronic skin disorder, others an infectious disease, and still others point to a hereditary affliction caused by generations of royal intermarriage that slowly degraded the bloodline's physical resilience. His constitution, the evidence whispers, was always fragile. His death, when it finally came, was swift. And what happened immediately after that death would set in motion one of the most extraordinary archaeological mysteries of the modern age. The woman who buried a king and then replaced him. When Thutmose II died, he left behind an empire that needed a ruler and a throne that needed a body. His heir, the infant Thutmose III, was born not to Hatshepsut but to a lesser royal wife named Iset, a child so young he could not yet walk without assistance, let alone command the armies of the world's most powerful nation. By law and by tradition, someone had to step forward as regent to hold the crown steady until the boy was old enough to wear it. And that someone was Hatshepsut, the widow, the half-sister, the great royal wife, the woman who had spent years watching her husband's unremarkable reign from the shadows of the palace. What happened next defied every convention of the ancient world. Hatshepsut did not simply serve as regent, she transformed. Within years of her husband's death, she declared herself not a queen but a king, adopting the full royal titulary. strapping on the ceremonial false beard and commissioning some of the most breathtaking architectural monuments in all of Egyptian history. She built her magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, launched a legendary trading expedition to the land of Punt, and ruled Egypt as pharaoh for roughly 2 decades. She was, according to many modern Egyptologists, one of the greatest rulers in the entire 3,000-year history of ancient Egypt. Her forgotten husband, by contrast, barely merited a footnote. But this is where the story grows darker and far more compelling. The alabaster jar fragments unearthed from inside Tomb C4 in 2025 bore hieroglyphic inscriptions naming both Thutmose II and Hatshepsut, and what those inscriptions revealed stunned the archaeological community. They confirmed definitively that it was Hatshepsut herself who had personally overseen her husband's burial rites, not his infant son. He is not a high priest acting on behalf of the royal family. Hatshepsut, the woman who would soon claim his throne for herself, was the one who sealed him into the earth, and that detail changes everything about how we read her ambition. She was both his burial director and, within years, his replacement. The question that immediately shadows that revelation is one that no inscription can answer directly. Did she bury him with grief or with quiet, calculating relief? That answer may never surface. But what archaeologists found inside that sealed chamber told a second story. One not about human ambition at all, but about the raw, catastrophic power of nature and how it nearly wiped a pharaoh from history forever. Halloween, 2022. The soft patch that changed everything. The Theban mountains rise in a dramatic bone-dry wall on the west bank of the Nile, just outside the ancient city of Luxor. For more than 12 years, Scottish archaeologist Dr. Piers Litherland, an honorary research associate at the University of Cambridge's MacDonald Institute for Archaeological Research, had been systematically excavating the western wadis, the parched, wind-carved riverbed slashed into the mountain face. His team had already uncovered 54 tombs in that stretch of desert. They had identified the burial sites of over 30 royal wives and court women of the New Kingdom. They were methodical, patient, and deeply experienced, and still nothing could have prepared them for what happened on the 31st of October 2022. It was 2 of Litherland's Egyptian colleagues, field surveyors Ashraf Omar Ali and Haraji Syed Ahmed, who first noticed it, a barely perceptible softness in the surface of the earth, a subtle give beneath the compacted desert floor that did not match the surrounding rock. To an untrained eye, it would have looked like nothing, a slight depression, a quirk of geology, but to men who had spent years learning to read the language of the ancient ground, it conveyed a great deal. Litherland's team moved immediately, excavating the area with careful precision, and within hours they had uncovered the entrance and main corridor of a previously unknown tomb, designated officially as Tomb C4, located in Wadi Gabanat El Khurud, roughly 2.4 kilometers west of the Valley of the Kings. Initially, nobody on the team thought they had found a pharaoh. The tomb's location was far from where New Kingdom royal burials were expected, positioned instead near the burial sites of Thutmose III's wives and near the cliff tomb that Hatshepsut had originally prepared for herself before she ascended to the throne as king. Everything pointed to a royal wife, a court woman of significance perhaps, but not a ruler. Initially, we thought we might have found the tomb of a royal wife, Litherland would later tell Cambridge University directly, but the wide staircase and the large doorway suggested something more important. For nearly 3 years, the team excavated carefully, battling not just the weight of history, but the physical aftermath of ancient disaster. The main passage had been filled solid with flood debris, hardened over centuries to a concrete-like consistency that resisted every tool the team could bring to bear. Then, after those 3 exhausting years of painstaking work, they reached the burial chamber. Litherland himself crawled through the narrow, rubble-choked second corridor. At the end of the tunnel, a chamber opened out around him. He looked up. The ceiling was painted deep blue, scattered with yellow stars, and he knew instantly, blue-painted ceilings with yellow stars are only found in kings' tombs. What the floods took, and what they left behind. The interior of Tomb C4 told 2 stories simultaneously. one of extraordinary royal grandeur and one of almost complete obliteration. The burial chamber itself, Chamber A, measured 5.3 by 5.2 meters and stood 3.4 meters high, a space built with the full architectural ambition of a new kingdom royal tomb. The walls that survived bore fragments of plaster painted with scenes from the Duat, the ancient Egyptian funerary text reserved exclusively for kings, a detailed sacred guide designed to navigate the deceased ruler through the 12 hours of the night and deliver him safely into the eternal morning sun. The discovery that the burial chamber had been decorated with scenes from the Duat, a religious text that is reserved for kings, was immensely exciting, Litherland confirmed, and was the first indication that the site was a king's tomb. Inscribed in blue and yellow stars across the ceiling were passages intended to carry a god-king through the darkness of death. It was unmistakably royal, but the flooding, ancient, catastrophic, and repeated, had done devastating work. The main axis of the tomb had been packed solid with densely compacted debris, hardened over 3,000 years into a barrier nearly as resistant as the limestone walls themselves. Ceiling sections had collapsed under the sustained water pressure. Wall decorations had been almost entirely destroyed, leaving only tantalizing fragments of what had once been a fully decorated royal burial chamber. An unusual second corridor, plastered in white gypsum and enlarged twice in what archaeologists identified as emergency modifications, appeared to have been constructed after the original passage flooded, serving as a desperate escape route for the priests attempting to remove and protect the tomb's contents. The evidence of a frantic ancient rescue operation was written into the architecture itself. This was not simply natural decay over millennia. The flooding appears to have struck with unusual severity approximately 6 years after Thutmose II's burial, a chilling timeline that suggests the tomb was still in active priestly memory when the waters hit. The original funerary objects, his grave goods, his burial equipment, and the sacred objects that were supposed to accompany a king into eternity had almost certainly been physically carried out through that emergency corridor in darkness, rushed away from the rising water and relocated elsewhere for safekeeping. Litherland himself described the surviving fragments as very small fragments of objects probably broken in the flooded tomb when they were removed in darkness, a phrase that conjures a vivid and haunting image. Priests scrambling through floodwater by torchlight, grabbing whatever they could save of their king's eternity. What those priests left behind, however, proved sufficient to rewrite history. Alabaster jar fragments, including pieces of small duck-shaped vessels used by ancient Egyptians to hold cosmetics and sacred oils, bore hieroglyphic inscriptions of Thutmose II's name and titles, referring to him by his pronomen as the Osiris Akheperen-Re, alongside inscriptions of Hatshepsut's name. According to Mohammed Ismail Khalid, Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, these fragments represented something historically unprecedented. This discovery is the first time funerary furniture belonging to Thutmose II has been discovered, as no such items exist in museums worldwide. The pottery shards, the fragments of sacred text, and the star-covered ceiling. They confirmed beyond reasonable doubt that a king had been buried here. But they also confirmed something that sent a chill through the Egyptological community. The main burial equipment was gone. And if the priests had moved it, there was only one logical conclusion. Somewhere in the Theban mountains, a second tomb was waiting. The body that may not be his, Egypt's most troubling identity mystery. Now the story becomes truly unsettling. The mummy that has long been displayed in Cairo as King Thutmose II, catalogued as specimen CG 61066, discovered in the famous Deir el-Bahari royal cache in 1881, may not be him at all. That royal cache was a hidden vault where ancient Egyptian priests secretly relocated dozens of royal mummies during the chaotic Third Intermediate Period, bundling together some of history's most powerful rulers to protect them from tomb robbers. The mummy labeled as Thutmose II was found there, wrapped and tagged, and for well over a century, it was accepted without serious challenge as genuine. But modern physical examination of that mummy has raised a profoundly uncomfortable question. The skeletal analysis indicates that the body belonged to a man who died at approximately 30 years of age. Thutmose II, according to the best available historical chronology, almost certainly died in his late teens, possibly as young as 17 or 18 years old. The numbers do not match. The body is too old. And since the CG 61066 mummy was found bundled with other relocated royals in a cache that had been physically disturbed and reorganized by ancient priests under pressure, the possibility of a labeling error, whether accidental or deliberate, cannot be dismissed. Dr. Litherland himself made this point explicitly in an interview with The Observer in February 2025, stating that the mummy currently identified as Thutmose II cannot in fact be his, as it's the body of a man of around 30 years old, too old for a king who probably never reached that age. Some historians have gone further, arguing that the systematic marginalizing of Thutmose II from Egypt's official historical record, a process partially carried out by later rulers who wanted to minimize his reign in favor of the far more glorious Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, may have extended even to the deliberate confusion of his physical remains. The conspiracy in this reading is not modern but ancient, a calculated rewriting of the past by the civilization that built the tombs. It is a theory that cannot be proven, but it also critically cannot be ruled out. The more measured scientific explanation is simpler but no less troubling. The priests who relocated the mummies were working in haste under severe political pressure in a period of deep instability, and mistakes were made. Tags were mixed, coffins were reassigned. The mummy we call Thutmose II may belong to an entirely different individual from the same era, a royal official, a prince, or a lesser member of the extended court whose name was lost when his tag was switched in the dark. And if that is true, then the actual physical remains of King Thutmose II have never been found. They may still be sitting somewhere in the Theban mountains, sealed inside that second tomb that Dr. Litherland believes he has already located, unexcavated, untouched, and waiting in a darkness that has lasted 35 centuries. The second tomb, and the discovery that could rewrite a dynasty. In the days following the February 2025 announcement, Dr. Litherland gave an interview to the British newspaper as the global archaeological community was still absorbing the magnitude of what had been found. The Observer transmitted a second shockwave through Egyptology. He revealed that he believed he had already identified the location of a second tomb, which was buried beneath 23 meters of deliberately piled limestone flakes, rubble, ash, and mud plaster, in an artificial mound so large that it disguised the site as part of the natural mountain itself. There are 23 meters of a pile of man-made layers sitting above a point in the landscape where we believe there is a monument concealed beneath. And we have other confirmatory evidence that there is a monument concealed beneath, he told the paper. The best candidate for what was hidden underneath that enormously labor-intensive construction, he confirmed, was the second tomb of Thutmose II, the one where the fleeing priests almost certainly deposited the original burial contents after the flood struck. If that tomb exists and remains unlooted, it could contain the royal funerary equipment of a new kingdom pharaoh, sealed and untouched for 3,500 years. To understand why this prospect is so electrifying, consider what was found inside Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, which is the discovery that this one is being directly compared to. Howard Carter's team recovered 5,398 individual objects from that single burial. Golden thrones, ceremonial chariots, statues, weapons, painted chests, alabaster canopic jars, and gilded shrines nested inside each other like the most elaborate puzzle in human history. And by ancient Egyptian standards, they considered Tutankhamun a minor king who died young and was buried with considerable haste. Thutmose II, for all his historical obscurity, was a full reigning pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, buried with the full ceremonial weight of Egypt's most powerful period and by the woman who would become one of history's most formidable rulers. If his relocated burial cache is intact and undisturbed, what it contains could exceed anything Egypt has produced since 1922. The joint mission, Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, working alongside the New Kingdom Research Foundation at Cambridge University, has confirmed that excavations are continuing. The discovery was named one of the top 10 archaeological breakthroughs worldwide for 2025 by Archaeology magazine, and an inscription uncovered inside the tomb appeared on the cover of that magazine's January-February 2026 issue, an image of an ancient pharaoh's name, carved in stone, staring out from newsstands 3,500 years after the hands that carved it crumbled to dust. What Tomb C4 has already given the world is staggering. The first funerary objects ever confirmed to belong to Thutmose II, definitive proof that Hatshepsut personally oversaw his burial. A revolutionary insight into the architectural evolution of New Kingdom royal tombs through its unique bent-axis design, and a definitive answer to the long-standing mystery of where the early 18th dynasty kings were buried. But what Tomb C4 has also delivered, perhaps more powerfully than any single artifact, is a suspended sentence, an answer that generates a far larger question. If the body in Cairo is not Thutmose II, if his actual mummy is still out there somewhere in the Theban mountain, lying in an unexcavated chamber alongside 35 centuries of undisturbed royal treasure, then the greatest discovery of the modern archaeological age may not be behind us at all. It may be buried under 23 meters of rubble right now, waiting for the next soft patch of ground. Consider this. If a pharaoh who once commanded the greatest empire on earth could vanish so completely from the archaeological record that his tomb went undiscovered for 3.5 millennia, what else is still down there sealed beneath the desert waiting? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think they will find inside that second tomb? And if this story hit the way it was meant to, hit subscribe